This subject that we're talking about today is called the Product Flywheel, and it's the intersection between marketing and product. It's the newest, latest thing. There's growth teams being built across companies that have found the utility in this and have really explored and blown it out. So it's something I'm really passionate about. I took a marketing course just last year just to try and get more skills on the books, because I think if you combine the two, it's pretty powerful. So I'm going to talk to you guys about that today. All right. This is the intersection of marketing, data, and product, and it kind of goes through why that's so powerful for companies. One of the things I've realized over time is that product isn't the only group that looks at metrics. Marketing also looks at metrics, but they're a little bit different. So if you look at product metrics, they're more geared towards maybe conversion rate, the dwell time, how much time you're actually within the app, engagement in the features, net promoter score or the NPS, and then specific product KPIs that you might establish. Whereas on the marketing side, it's more about that return on investment, like that customer acquisition cost, return on advertisement spend, customer lifetime value, and that customer retention rate. These are really common things to look at in the marketing space, but not so much on the product, because the product is trying to be like this big, shiny, awesome thing for the user. And marketing is trying to make sure whatever money they're dumping into this is well spent. But recently, people have been trying to figure out, all right, if we're taking metrics on both of these things, how are they related? So when it comes to growth, and if you start tiptoeing into that space, a lot of people are trying to find that one meme or video that kind of gains a lot of traction. And we call that like growth hacking, where you establish some really sweet, awesome video that's entertaining and funny. Everybody shares it. It goes viral. And then your product just blossoms and everybody catches on and everyone loves it. The unfortunate part about this is viral does not actually equal growth. It's actually could be damaging for your product and brand, because sometimes people will be really excited about it for maybe 2 days tops and then completely forget about it. And you're just branded as that flash in a pan and not so much as something that can grow at a better rate. So sometimes when we talk about growth and product growth and strategy, people are just like, yeah, growth hacking, that's so cool. But this is stepping away from that and trying to figure it out from a more strategic standpoint. So what does that mean? I only work by examples and metaphors, so I came up with an example that helps us talk this through a little bit. This would be space B&B, unique places to stay and things to do. So what we're going to try and do here is establish who our users are. So this gets into more of the product metrics and the things around there. So you can think of people who want to do space travel, probably think a little bit differently than those who don't, probably a little bit more adventurous, into technology, things like that. So if I'm going through and I'm trying to establish some personas that might relate to this product, within an interview, I might have caught on to a quote where somebody just randomly says, "Oh, I love robots." And this could be a hidden gem for something like the Product Flywheel, because it establishes something maybe a little ancillary to the product itself that you can use to connect to your users without them really realizing that you're basically reading their minds, because you've done so much research, you know what makes them tick. So one of the key factors is learning which metric within your product is kind of the switch where the user goes from, I will try your product, to your product is my life, or I am addicted to it, or I use it in a consistent way, the way you expect me to. Facebook did an amazing job of this. This is probably the best example I could find. They tried to figure out what would make them go viral. They're not the only one. Amazon did this too, but Facebook said, we've learned that users love making social connections similar to those I love robot kind of idea. And after a certain number of connections, the dwell time increases and the bounce rate decreases. In other words, people are sticking around once they hit this metric. So you could maybe speculate something like this and just be like, oh, well, that's obvious change. Who cares? But if we actually stick a number to this and we say it's actually specifically 7 friends, if I connect with 7 friends, I switch from this user that maybe logs in once or twice a year to somebody who uses it on a daily basis. If I hit that 7 friends mark, then I will be in the next phase, if you will, of my product life cycle. And Facebook actually learned this. It's an actual fact. If you have more than 7 friends, that's when you start being addicted to Facebook. I'm not sure if that still pertains today. I'm pretty sure it's antiquated metric at this point, but it did work at the time. And what's great about this is now product can say, all right, marketing, what we're really trying to do here is get people to connect. Like, just focus on that. When you pitch the product, don't just be like, Facebook is great. Be like, Facebook is great to connect with friends. Facebook is great to establish an online presence with your network with, 7 people or more. You don't have to be specific, but that's kind of where, once we find out within product that 7 friends is our magic mark, then marketing can go in there and kind of leverage that to their disposal. They can really push the product forward. So if we keep going here and we take those concepts, there's that thing called the flywheel that just builds this momentum within those metrics that pushes the product into this viral mode without you doing much effort. Because if you get those metrics just right, they can start pushing on each other almost like a domino effect. And our job as people within product can kind of just sit back and relax and wait for the people to come to us because we've got our metrics down right. So what does that look like? It looks like this. This is a very pretty representation of this life cycle. So if you look at the inner circle here, this would be what relates to an ideal user's life cycle within your product. So you kind of start as an evaluator. You're not actually in the product yet. You're trying to figure out if you want to do it or not. Your friend told you it's really awesome, but you're not really sure. And then you could be a beginner. Maybe you create an account. We've got you in the system. People a lot of times think that it's over right here. This is the end. We've got them. We're done. But there's more. And if you stop here, this is a really common mistake. You're going to get a lot of fallout. People are eventually going to get bored and leave. We want them to transition to those regulars. And this is when that 7 friends adoption on Facebook would really turn them into regulars. Because this is when they start becoming an actual part of your ecosystem within your product, and you get to have some fun with them. But that's not enough either. If they're regulars and they're not talking about us yet, then they're not really doing us any favors other than living within where we want them to be. Ideally, we want them to become champions of our product. We want them to be so stoked about what we're building and what we're contributing to their lives that they have to tell their friends about it. They have to say, I had that problem too. This is how I solved it. And then they create and generate evaluators that then become beginners, that then become regulars, that then become champions. Now, if you look at this outside circle here, these are the metrics that turnkey into the next phase. So I figure out a metric for activate. Now I become a beginner. I figure out a metric for adopt. Now I have my regulars. I figure out a metric for adore. And then I have my champions. And then I figure out my metric for advocate. And then I have my new evaluators. So you can see if we get this right, it's pretty powerful. And it only takes 4 metrics to really figure out what that is. And then once you get those 4 down and you tell marketing, like, these are the things you need to push. All right, once they're beginners, now you're going to push this new metric, try and get them to do this. Okay, now that they're regulars, now we're going to push them to become champions. And now that they're champions, let's get them to share it with their friends. A lot of people try and get them to share with their friends before they're champions. That's one way to go, but it's really more powerful if the champions decide on their own to share it with some new evaluators. activation. So these all have specific definitions. So it helps the product and growth teams and marketing teams establish what these metrics are. This is defined by a moment of relief and excitement when a user discovers the solution to their problem. That's why in metrics and product, we like to make sure there's a problem that we are solving. So this is how we get them to create an account, for example. And then there's adoption is about forming habits and getting users to associate your product with a specific task or solution. So I didn't just create an account. I know that every time I need to create a shopping list, I open up the specific app because that's what I know to use. I am a regular user of an application because it solves a problem for me that I have on a consistent basis. And then Adore, users don't just use their products, but they look forward and enjoy using it. So maybe I have to open your app to use it to create a shopping list, but I don't love it. It's kind of annoying. What I would love is every time I realize I need something, I could just tell Google, hey, Google, put X, Y, and Z on the shopping list. Now I actually like it because I just go to the store without having to create a list. And it's so much easier. I adore it. So if we get into the advocate, this takes it one more step without prompt. So we can tell marketing to kind of push them, but they should be doing it on their own because they're so excited about us. Users are inviting other users to your product, leaving reviews, actively evangelizing your product. And this is why products like Facebook, products like Amazon are viral. They went product viral, which is super rare, but it follows a process that any other product can use to do the same thing. So it's pretty powerful if you can get these metrics right. If you think of this black arrow as that metric, you can really tell marketing, tell product, tell everybody, if we can hit 7 friends by this date or whatever the metric is, then everybody becomes that next phase. So it's a pretty cool process and why I'm probably really excited about it. So back in the old days, there used to be this thing called the marketing funnel. You would establish campaigns. You would try and filter those users into your product, and then they would just do kind of whatever. And you can't blame them. Like, obviously you want people to come to your product and you don't really think about once they're in there, what happens. And we just kind of drop them off. But now this new concept of the product-led flywheel, we actually have ongoing cycles. So if you think about trying to get activators on board, and it's not just that once we get them into the product, we just let them sit there. We're actively trying to get them to become that regular user. And once they're a regular user, then we're trying to get them to become that advocate. And then they try and find more users. So it's a lot more of a integrated system and metrics that make sense for both marketing and product, and can really be powerful.
Cool though that you brought up the Facebook example, because back then at the time when they were doing like tell 7 friends in 15 days or whatever, I'm pretty sure MySpace and or any other social media was focused on monthly active users.
Yeah.
Right. And so at Facebook, everybody was focused on growth.
Yeah. It's incredible the difference it can make if you focus on the right metric and push that instead of the other ones, because the other ones will follow if you get this metric right.
Do you guys have any resources you would like recommend for learning about the product flywheel or just marketing?
Yes.
Especially for someone who is like from zero to hero, no experience at all.
I'm putting it in the chat. This is where I learned about it.
Okay, I also want to ask the concept of the flywheel. I know there's certain elements of the growth metrics that obviously has been used before in the past, but like the concept of the flywheel itself, is this concept a new concept? And was it recently like researched about? And obviously if it's just a new concept, and we can see that in coming years, we can see products we actually have it very difficult to actually fill. And also, is it the product managers that are spearheading this?
I didn't come up with it, so I'm not sure exactly when it was established. It was new to me last year.
Cool.
New to me. So it's probably before that, that I was spinning around. But what's interesting about your question of like, who is pushing this? That was my question too. I'm like, oh my gosh, is this on me? Like, should I be pushing this? and I'm going to anyway, but like, I wasn't sure if it was meant to be for me. The guy I heard about it from actually was establishing, he went to a C-level guy and he's like, this isn't actually product. This isn't actually marketing. We need a team dedicated to this because to your point, it's very hard to establish and you need kind of people always either advocating for it, tracking it, trying to determine which metrics go to what. It's time consuming and it does take people's dedication to establish it, to get it going in the company. And he established what he's calling growth teams that would help facilitate this. So they're separate teams. Sometimes it's just a overlap of the product and marketing teams that usually they're on either marketing or product, but then they have growth meetings and they've established like a growth team overlap that focuses on this. So that's been happening. There's also like new roles now. You can look up like growth team roles, growth team leads, growth team. People are just focusing on this. So I don't know when exactly it was established, but it was established enough to where people in that growth space and that marketing space are pretty familiar with it, at least in certain regions, and have already created teams, philosophies, whole life cycles around it.
Very cool. Well, thank you, Jean. Thanks.